Today we're discussing this, the Canon R6 Mark III. This is an excellent camera. Let's get undone.
Gerald Undone. He's crazy.
What's happening, everybody? I'm Gerald Undone, and this is one of the reviews of all time. First up, for disclosure, Canon lent me this camera to make this review. They didn't pay me for this coverage, and they don't get to preview the video before I publish. This video does have an actual sponsor though, and that's Storyblocks. Also, shout out to Camera Canada for lending me a 24-70, which made this review a lot easier to make. Camera Canada is awesome. Lastly, I highly encourage you to watch my Canon C50 and probably my R5 Mark II reviews as well. One, because I think you should know all about those cameras before you decide to buy this one. And two, I'm getting too old and curmudgeonly to continuously restate findings from previous videos. And considering that this R6 Mark III is using the same sensor as the C50, there is a lot of overlap. In fact, I'd pretty much call this camera the love child between the C50 and the R5 Mark II, which is a good thing. While the body style is a bit different than the R5 Mark II, mainly no top screen, and it more closely matches the R6 Mark II body, you're getting a lot of the updated features and capabilities we saw in the R5 Mark II, but with the C50 sensor and video performance. This means you're getting an extremely capable photo and video camera with most of the advantages of those two bodies, and for some users, even fewer disadvantages. For example, if the main reason you were hesitating on getting the C50 was the lack of in-body image stabilization, well, the R6 Mark III has it, while also being a much better photo camera. Now, all that extra hybrid utility does come at two costs. It's less resilient to overheating compared to the C50, which had an internal fan, and it has slightly worse dynamic range. The sensor has the same resolution and gets the same rolling shutter results as the C50, which means 17.9 milliseconds in open gate and 14.3 milliseconds in the 16:9 oversampled modes, which is a respectable result. It also has a dual native light cleanup at ISO 6400, just like the C50, and offers most of the same frame rate and recording options. The codecs are different though, slightly different flavors of RAW and AVC options, and perhaps it was because of this, or the lack of a cooling fan, or maybe just optimizations that are reserved for the cinema line, but I was getting lower dynamic range scores across the board. Nothing game-breaking, but while I consistently got in the high 14s to low 15s on the C50 for total dynamic range in RAW, developed as Canon Log 2, I was only getting in the low 14s on the R6 Mark III. I also noticed that the 4K fine was about half a stop worse for total dynamic range and scored over a stop worse on the medium signal noise ratio of 2 score, which means that the clips on the R6 Mark III are noisier. Now, to be fair, it could be argued that the C50 might have been a bit too aggressive with the noise reduction in the non-RAW modes in the first place. And maybe it's better that the R6 Mark III toned that down some, leaving you more room to work in post. But it is interesting that the C50 can seemingly see about half a stop more into the shadows. Again, this could be due to using the cinema codecs and being more optimized for video on the C50, or perhaps it's just noise from having the camera run hotter, getting into the image on the R6 Mark III. I don't think it should be a deal breaker, but for simplification, you could say you're giving up half a stop of dynamic range to get IBIS. Obviously, I think it's more nuanced than that. And I think if you were primarily focused on video, the C50 is the better camera because of its reliability, layout, audio options, cinema interface, and so on. But it's hard to deny how much the R6 Mark III is bringing to the table, and in my testing, it even offers better color than the C50. It would seem like Canon has different approaches to color between their photo cameras and their video cameras, but I found the skin tones to be more neutral and the reds and magentas to be more accurate and less overdone on the R6 Mark III compared to the C50. I would go as far as to say that the R6 Mark III might be my favorite camera from Canon when it comes to how colors are handled. And thankfully, you've got both Canon Log 2 and 3 on this camera in RAW or AVC with proper gamuts, so you're not limited there. And I'll be adding the R6 Mark III to my Canon LUT pack. If you've already purchased it, expect to get an email with a free upgrade to include this camera. And if you haven't purchased yet, please consider it. I create extremely color-accurate technical LUTs to turn your log into a precise 709 image in essentially just one step. This makes it easy to match all your Canon cameras, but also to match cameras from other brands I've covered too. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in checking them out. Thanks. Another thing that contributes to better color on this camera is the white balance tool. The ability to get custom white balance in video is the easiest it's ever been on a Canon photo camera with the R6 Mark III. Not only is the measurement more accurate than it used to be, but they've got acquiring it down to just 2 presses, which is great. Who remembers the old days when Canon used to make you take a picture of your white balance target in photo mode, then switch over to video and import that photo just to set your white balance? Thankfully, those days are behind us. The next step will be for Canon to add the ability to move that target box around. Currently, it's just fixed to the center as far as I can tell, but since I've complained a lot about this in the past, I just want to say, good job, Canon. This is much better. Everything else is excellent. As I mentioned in those previous videos, you've got great autofocus, redundant and relay recording, good exposure tools, solid build quality and comfort, full-size HDMI, UVC webcam capabilities over USB-C, power delivery, an excellent flip screen, a nice viewfinder, intuitive touch controls, and powerful photo capabilities with great subject detection, pre-capture, and up to 40 frames per second burst. You could be confidently photographing sports 1 minute and then shooting a 7K RAW film the next with this camera. And the fact you're getting all this in that middle price bracket is fantastic. In fact, the only thing that still really annoyed me about this camera is the way Canon manages the card door and time remaining when shooting video on these photo cameras. It still has the issue where opening the card door shuts the camera off and also cancels charging over USB. This means that even though it has relay recording, hot swapping cards is not possible. I don't understand why the card door needs to be linked to power. And when you are recording, the camera only shows you how much time you've recorded for, not how much time you have remaining, which is a problematic oversight. And of course, the longevity of that recording is probably one of the biggest questions I had when comparing this to the C50. But before I share my overheating results with you, I'm going to take a quick moment to thank Storyblocks for sponsoring today's video. So Storyblocks is a stock media platform that offers unlimited downloads of diverse and high quality content for one predictable subscription cost. Choose a monthly or annual plan and enjoy a library of over 1 million HD and 4K video files, images, and motion graphics templates, including a continually expanding inventory of DaVinci Resolve templates that I've come to really appreciate. And more importantly, all of those assets are created by real people sharing real experiences. Because in this age of artificial intelligence, where an increasing volume of what we see online is generated by AI, Storyblocks is proud to be providing authentic stock content created by actual artists that AI can't replicate. Plus, anything you download from Storyblocks is 100% royalty-free with clear-cut licensing, so you can focus on creating, not worrying about usage rights. Their platform is incredibly easy to use, and the library is frequently restocked with commission content based on customer demand to ensure you'll have access to files that are not only high quality, but fresh and diverse. So to streamline your workflow and get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one set price, head to storyblocks.com/undone or click the link in the video description. Now, when it comes to overheating, you should always take these test results with a grain of salt and assume the worst. I test them in a stable 22°C or 72 Fahrenheit indoor environment because it's winter here in Canada, but hotter ambient temperatures will obviously yield worse results. However, I was actually really impressed by the R6 Mark III. Compared to the C50, yes, it does overheat. This camera will give you warnings if you shoot in RAW, in OpenGate, or in 4K 60 or above. It doesn't give any warnings in the oversampled 4K 24 or 30 modes though, which is great since that's what I assume most of the extremely long recordings will be using. But even in OpenGate, I was able to run down the battery well before the camera overheated. The battery life on this camera is acceptable, not amazing, but decent. I got 1 hour and 59 minutes of 4K 24 oversampled on a full charge, and doing that only got the heat meter to a 2 out of 10. Battery life in 4K 60 and OpenGate is obviously reduced, but again, the battery died before the camera overheated, with 5 out of 10 being the highest the heat meter got to. Thermal testing in RAW is unreliable because my cards kept filling up due to the massive bit rates, so you aren't actually recording continuously when you stop to format or replace the card. But I was able to record in 15-minute increments until the battery died. So that's good. And again, all this was done at 22 Celsius. You know what's great? These videos, these camera reviews of mine, are getting increasingly tedious and unstimulating to make. And I'm doing a worse job of it each time. And it's because cameras are basically solved now. The R6 Mark III is just further proof of this. I'm over here agonizing about thirds of a stop differences in dynamic range, which you can't even see in real-world comparisons, or how many hours you can record full-frame oversampled 4K 60 for. And we aren't talking about cinema cameras that cost 5 figures, we're talking about $2,800 hybrids. That's why I barely discuss autofocus on Canon and Sony cameras anymore. It just works almost perfectly every time. And low light, just about every camera now looks great at ISO 12,800 and beyond. It's just wild. My videos used to be about carefully examining the last few weak points of hybrid video, because photo's been solved for a while, in my opinion, but video still had compromises. Previously, it seemed a sensor wasn't able to be reasonably priced, fast reading, and have great image quality. Well, now they can be, and they can do all that with much higher reliability and more advanced features than I thought possible just a couple years ago. So to my fellow Canon shooting camera nerds who like to tear apart specs and compare the trivialities as much as I used to, pack it up, boys. The R6 Mark III is here. Cameras are solved. Time to go home. All right. I'm done.